2 days before Christmas in 2010, and 54-year-old Alan Catterall, along with his future son-in-law Mark, were sitting in the break room of a kayak molding facility in the United Kingdom where they both worked. It was only 7 a.m., but they were already taking this break to talk about Christmas because they were so excited about it. But they finally said, okay, we do need to go to work, and then Alan made his way down to the factory floor, and his future son-in-law Mark made his way up to the control room. On the factory floor, where Alan was heading, was where all the special machinery was inside of these little rooms where the kayaks were actually molded and put together. And it was Alan's job to make sure the machinery was clean and operational. That day, Alan knew one of the circuit boards for one of these molding rooms had shorted out. He knew when he went in there, it was not going to be operational. But when he went into that particular molding room, he noticed that it really needed a good clean. And so Alan grabbed a crowbar and he headed into this shutdown molding room and he got to work. But as Alan chipped away at all the plastic, the doors shut. He knew that if these doors were shutting, that meant that the circuit board had to have been fixed. And so Alan ran to the door, and with his crowbar, he began trying to pry the doors open, screaming for anybody out in the factory floor. But it was so loud out on the factory floor, nobody heard him. And so before long, Alan must have looked around and saw the walls inside of this tight, cramped space beginning to glow red. Because this molding room was actually just an oven. It reached almost 600 degrees Fahrenheit in about 10 minutes. And then before long, the crowbar he was using to try to open the door must have become so hot he couldn't have held it. Alan eventually just collapsed to the ground in unimaginable pain as he cooked alive. Finally, when Alan caught on fire and black smoke began coming off of his body and pouring out onto the factory floor, the factory realized there's a problem with this molding room, so they turned it off, they opened it up, and they discovered Alan. It would turn out, after Mark and Alan had chatted about Christmas in the break room, Alan had gone down to the factory floor and inside of that molding room, and his future son-in-law, Mark, had gone up to the control room where he would have no visibility of the factory floor. All he had was this big switchboard full of lights and switches and gauges that controlled all of the molding rooms. He saw a blinking light come on, and it was for the molding room that Alan was working inside of. And that blinking light meant someone had fixed the circuit board, and so that molding room now had power. And so reflexively, Mark just turned it on. And when he did that, the molding room began its restart process, which included sealing its doors and turning on the oven. 5 years later, the kayak molding company was convicted of corporate manslaughter and fined 200,000 pounds. Also, the man who actually designed these molding rooms, he was fined 25,000 pounds and sentenced to jail for 9 months.